Alrighty, it's 6 o'clock. I've started the recording. Welcome to this NSS session for assignment 2. I know you've literally just handed in assignment 1 and probably need a break from the trauma, but sorry, it's just what the timing demands in the calendar. But yeah, so we basically, look, this assignment is very similar to the first one. So it shouldn't be too surprising. There shouldn't be anything too scary. It is slightly more complex, so some more analytical skills required. But yeah, tonight basically we're just going to break it all down and I will answer any questions that anyone has about it or anything else. All right. Okay, cool. So let me just share my screen, although the file is there for you to download. Okay, so literally the exact same instructions that you had for your first assignment. So we have a page count, which I know is strange, but it is what it is. We have to stick to the assignment brief. And so, yeah, again, an 8-page limit, and this applies to the contents of the answers. Okay, so this does not include the reference list. It is just your answers to the questions. And they have given these guidelines on formatting. Okay, so I know that this whole thing here that I've highlighted breaks APA guidelines. It is something that we are addressing. We actually had a meeting today with the online psych lecturers, and it would take time to get everyone to, edit the assignments instructions and make it all pristine across the board to remove things like this that are, incongruent at times. But hopefully that process is going to start soon. But for now, we've basically reached the consensus that everyone must follow, and we will mark according to APA 7th guidelines for both formatting and referencing. And then just when there is this exception placed on top, such as this now stipulating that you must use 1.5 line spacing, then obviously that overrules the APA guideline. And so essentially we take the instruction on the assignment brief as the final word, okay, when it comes to formatting. So just the difference being, and just, in case you haven't spotted it, but the difference is that APA is double line spacing. And the margins, I don't know why they've specified this, it's just normal margins. But that basically is the difference with that. And this assignment, there is an essay, so that would require the use of the APA headings. And I will run through that quickly when we get to that question. Okay. All right, but yeah, just, on record, so these are the broad instructions. Okay, so you will have to find additional academic sources, credible academic sources, on top of your textbook, and each question tells you how many that you need, okay? We will get there. These margins, I think, are default settings, but whatever Word's default settings are, like if you go into where it says layout and margins and it just says normal, then that is absolutely fine. Okay, the point is to not cheat the system and put narrow margins. So yeah, they must look like this and not have, this very skinny margin on the sides. Cool. And yeah, so the entire assignment, okay, meaning the content of the assignment must not exceed 8 pages. Okay, so please do stick within the page count and please provide page numbers. It just is polite, and also it is APA guidelines. Okay, top right-hand corner is standard APA guideline for page numbers. Okay, while I'm talking about APA, might as well. I have shared, I believe in an announcement, I can't remember if it was on Monday or last week, that website, APA's official style guides website, where there's every guide imaginable for you. But what is very cool and very useful on that website is they have examples. They have student paper examples and also a couple of templates here and there. So that should really help eliminate a lot of the anxiety that you might be feeling around this whole sudden stringent APA enforcement. But really it's something that really should be going on. And so we're just rolling that out now, okay, just so that everyone is marking across the board on the same basis. Okay, so yeah, correct, Kaylin. The page limit does not include the content page or the cover page. It's literally just the answers. So where you would say question 1 and then have your answers and then up until the end of question 3. Okay, so I do encourage you guys to go and explore that APA website. I can actually, let me see if I can just paste the link in the chat as well quickly. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's just the link to the general website. And when you navigate yourselves through there, you'll see there's all sorts. There's referencing examples, even title page setup, but you can ignore that because you use the VC template for your title page. That's all fine, okay? Really what you're looking at is obviously the in-text citations, the reference lists, and the paper format, okay? And then, yeah, you'll see there's some sample papers that will really help you along this road. Okay, but I think let's get through the assignment instructions and then I will take APA questions at the end of the questions, because then I can, pull up a whiteboard and do some examples if need be. Okay, cool. Let's chat about question 1. Okay, so again, very similar format. There are 3 questions. The first one is 20 marks, then there's a WAPO for 50 marks, and then the last 30 marks in question 3. Apologies for my dogs barking. The storm has just started. Okay, so let's just get into it. There is basically a little bit of a mini case scenario for each question. So do make sure to stay within the context of this little blurb that they give you. Okay, the first one is, pretty broad, but the actual question that you're asked is fairly specific. Okay, so just as a matter of context, a large majority of South Africans live in low-income households and impoverished communities with limited access to healthcare. Okay, that's the important contextual bit of information there. And then what you have to do is discuss, okay, so keyword there, discuss 4 prevalent teratogens or teratogens, however you say that, in South Africa's socio-economic context. Okay, so if you do cast your minds back, we covered teratogens when we did the whole birth situation and with that biological development. Does anyone care to offer a little definition of a teratogen for me, or an example? What are teratogens? Yes, alcohol, diseases, drugs, environmental dangers. Basically, yeah, environmental dangers, especially in this context, that have some sort of negative influence over pregnancy for various reasons. Yeah, STDs, certain illness, and yeah, that's under diseases. Yeah, drugs, certain types of medication, pollution, yeah, environmental things, nutrition, bad nutrition, certain things like carcinogens or harmful substances that are ingested through food for whatever reason. Okay, just some ideas to get you guys ticking. I literally can't give you the answers, but also that's not really that they're wrong answers here. It's more just that you find kind of 4 prevalent ones that we do deal with, something that, the Department of Health deals with all the time. What are the things that we try to, address in terms of prenatal health care for our women? Okay, Rebecca, I'll get to that in 1 second. Okay, so very importantly, so it's 20 marks. You have to provide 4 things. That means you will get, and there will be a memo for question 1, you will get 5 marks for each teratogen that you speak about. Okay, so that should help in terms of mark allocation. Make sure that you are covering that kind of amount of information for each thing, right? Okay, so firstly, for each thing, I think just where I would start is obviously, so name it first of all, then define it. So what is it? Place it in the context. So why it happens, when, where, etc. And then example. Do not forget the example. The example is vital. Okay. So that will give you 5 marks basically for each thing, and that should make up 20 marks. Okay. And yeah, again, this context and example is obviously very important because that's the instruction here. You need to provide the context for these. Okay, so remember you are looking in teratogens that are particularly prevalent in lower income areas and impoverished communities, areas where poverty is high, limited access to healthcare. So, what kind of teratogens are more commonly affecting, people who don't have excellent access to healthcare. Think along those lines. Okay, and it says with credible academic research for each one. Okay, so you must reference, and so the example you provide must be from an academic article. Okay, so it doesn't say that you need a different one per each thing. It's just that each one must come from an academic source. Okay, you are just more likely to find fairly specific research on these types of things. You could find one that discusses 8 of them, you never know. But there is so much research out there. Okay, you're not going to struggle to find sources speaking about this. So basically the idea is that you reference every single one, okay, that you speak about. So at least one reference per teratogen that you speak to. Okay, and that's not including your textbook. So, it would help to just at some point when answering the question, define what a teratogen is. You can use your textbook for that. But for each of the individual 4 that you discuss, provide a credible academic source for that. Okay, and they have put this here. They've even told you that you will lose 3 marks per teratogen that is not supported by research evidence. Okay, so that means if you don't reference one of them that you speak about from a it even says research evidence. Okay, so that means a research article. Don't come here with blogs, don't come with news articles, okay? It's telling you research. Then yeah, that's insane because that's 369. That's 12 out of 20 marks that you could lose for forgetting to reference, basically. Okay, so don't do that. It's the most vital thing you can do here is practice backing up your information with research. Yes, a journal, any relevant journal, peer-reviewed journal that you find. Okay. Okay, any other questions when it comes to question 1? Let's check out the chats. Mark allocation of question 1 and 2 in the first assignment were a bit tricky. Yeah, I think it comes to what it's asking for and how much to write. It is a bit difficult to juggle that kind of thing, and it's difficult for me to prescribe how long a section would be. For this one, it's a little bit easier to prescribe. It's not going to be extraordinarily long. You're going to have a paragraph per teratogen for this one. So you could, if you write concisely, do the whole of question 1 in a page. But you could allow yourself up to a page and a half if absolutely necessary. Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me for this mark allocation. Okay, no, good question. So the examples you use must come from the sources. Okay, so it's saying supported by research evidence. So yeah, obviously everyone will know kind of common use examples, but you need to provide the example from the academic source that you find. Okay. Yeah, and I think just the last tip for this question is to think through that, don't just kind of go with the first 4 teratogens that pop into your brain or that Google comes up with. Consider that context of lower income areas and particularly areas with limited access to healthcare for whatever reason. Okay. Okay, are we happy to move on to question 2? obviously we can go back if there are any questions that do pop up. Nana? Okay, excellent. Question 2 is longer, okay, 50 marks. So this does mean it's going to be the majority of your page count. And there are quite a few things you have to tackle here, although they have broken that down for you as well into mark allocation, which will be very useful in terms of how much you write for each one. And the basic answer is the same for all of them because you have 5 things to do and they are each for 10 marks. Okay. So this is the case. You have been, imagine that you have been employed as a developmental psychology specialist in the neonatal ward of a government hospital. Okay, so this is the context you are putting yourself in for this question. Fill the shoes of let's say a clinical psychologist working in a neonatal ward, okay, at a hospital. So you have noticed that you have postpartum issues with parents and you wish to create a postpartum support program for mothers and fathers. Do not forget the fathers in this instance, okay, in this question, because there's even a point that speaks particularly to the role of the father. Okay, so obviously of newborn babies. Ooh, thunder. Wild. Don't know if you guys can hear that, but hectic. Anyway, so of newborn babies, that's what neonatal means, okay, delivered at the hospital. So what you need to do for this question is, it's not an essay, it hasn't said that specifically. You're going to produce an in-depth guide. So think of it as like a kind of manual or like a brochure, or I mean, don't go and make a brochure, like, no, but kind of an informative leaflet that you would give to parents or propose to the hospital board on an intervention you could do to mitigate risk and to also build resilience in new parents. Okay, so those are those 2 factors. Sorry, I'm making this whole thing a rainbow. Anyway, okay, so 2 things, 2 chief purposes that you are going for here. You want to mitigate the risks, postpartum risks that occur, particularly obviously to mother and to baby, and then how to build resilience, okay, for the new family. I mean, let's just engage a bit. So what are some of the risks, neonatal risks? Does anyone want to throw a couple examples out perhaps in the chat? Just off of the top of your head, why is giving birth risky, particularly in a situation that may not be overly resourced? Anyone? Okay, yeah, so there are medical risks that can occur, okay? So yeah, any kind of complication, that's a risk. And I think because you are, obviously this is like a psychosocial sort of intervention, think about the things that can cause some of those complications. Okay, yeah, so yeah, Nicoletta, absolutely, that's on the correct path. So the birthing experience for the mother, and also you'll see when we go through the points for the father as well. Yeah, so your textbook does speak, and all partners, yeah, this, whatever the assignment heteronormative, just go with it. Yeah, so your textbook does speak to this, and yeah, you'll find a few readings as well, that role of the father/partner in the birthing process as well. Okay, so the 5 things that you need to, okay, yeah, look, I mean, Rebecca, it's a good thing. So obviously the availability of equipment, because yeah, you have been placed in this context of a government hospital. Not all government hospitals are created equally, particularly in South Africa. We know this. There's a lot of problems with resources, with staffing. Yeah. But again, just do maintain the focus that you are tasked with creating a postpartum support program. Okay, so that's your focus. How are you going to support new parents postpartum? Okay, so you need to identify, first of all, at-risk newborns. So what categorizes a newborn as at risk? Does anyone maybe have a few ideas? Or remember from when we did discuss this a bit? Yes, birth weight, absolutely. Yep, premature. If a child is premature, they are more at risk, absolutely. Mother's age, potentially, yeah. Stress, yes, I suppose. I mean, in what context? Um, okay, so not teratogens, because teratogens, that's during the like prenatal period. Now you're looking at from birth onwards. Okay, yeah, I think socially as well. So what is the environment, the home environment going to be like for the newborn? Do they have access to regular neonatal checkups? Do they have information about what's necessary for the neonatal checkups? Information around all of that stuff, around when do you bring the kid for a checkup, what to see, like what to notice if something's wrong. Yeah, environmental, so like things like check, like what to, like some people might genuinely just not have education in terms of like what is harmful in an environment for an infant, like things like mold or damp or whatever. That could form part of a psychoeducation type thing. I know the thunder was nuts. It was a really big crack. Okay, so yeah, I just do get thinking on that. Okay, so it's for 10 marks. They haven't said how many risks you need to identify. So this is a bit of a difficult one for me to prescribe. Oh wait, there is a rubric. Okay, we're going to go to the rubric. That might give some more clarity for how many to identify there. Let's just get through the instructions. Okay, so secondly, you need to then speak to the factors that contribute to a positive birthing experience. Okay, so first you're going to identify things that place newborns at risk. Then you're going to identify things that could alleviate the situation, right? So what are some contributing factors to a positive birth experience for mother, which then consequently decreases the risk of postpartum depression for the mother? Okay, so that's a clue there for you. Yeah, what are the risk factors for that and how might they be alleviated? Okay, here the third one, factors that contribute, so at least two factors to positive birthing experience for the father. Okay, it might be worth brainstorming this a bit. What do you guys think could contribute to a positive birthing experience for a father? Or I mean, think about it the opposites, right? So what makes a negative experience for a father/partner? Those of you who have been through the birthing process may have some things here. Yeah, any kind of complications obviously would be quite stressful. So I think like being able to provide support to, yeah, so some hospitals, particularly if it's a complicated birth, they don't allow partners in the room. This was a thing during COVID, partners or whoever weren't allowed in the room at all. So that impacted both mom and dad. I mean, yeah, paternity leave, absolutely, right? So we don't have the most fantastic paternity leave in the world. It's better than a lot of places. But I do believe that recently a new law came out about this. I can't remember it right now. We'll have to look that up. But do go and look at that as well. Consider things like paternity leave when it comes to this as well. Oh, I lost my place. Okay, next, factors that will decrease the effects of potential risks and complications and increase resilience in the birth process. Okay, so you're very much following on from what you've already identified. What will decrease these potential risks and complications? Okay. So what is important here in this one, though, is going to be this definition of resilience. Okay, so do define that according to source, whatever source you use. You can use your textbook as a source for that definition. What does that mean? All right, and then the last thing you need to do is provide examples, at least 2, of how the neonatal ward could go about this in the program. So it gives some practical, thought-through examples on how these ideas could actually be implemented to help reduce risk for new parents. Okay, it does say that you are required to consult 2 or more academic sources outside of your prescribed textbook. Okay, so at an absolute minimum 3 sources for this question. And obviously it must be credible academic sources as well. Okay, so it even also states outright here, and so because this is a rubric, which I'm going to go to, it's at the bottom, that if you don't back up your ideas, so like when you're identifying risks, that must come from literature, okay? You can't just imagine it from the ether. These things have been defined many times in research, okay? And so it's saying you will be limited. Even if your answers are like completely correct, if you don't back it up with relevant research, you can't achieve the top block in the rubric. Okay. So let's look at that. All right, so always just look at the top block of the rubric to see what you're aiming for. So identifying at-risk newborns, for 10 marks, you need to, it doesn't say how many you need to identify, okay? But for 10 marks, I mean, more than 5 would probably be a bit excessive, considering the fact that it's a discussion, okay? So you need to identify the risk, but then also explain why it's a risk in this context. So I would say up to 5, and less than 2 would not, and like, I mean, you know what? 3 to 5. Let's go with 3 to 5. That would be a good ballpark for how many to identify here, okay? Okay, identifying factors that contribute positively to the birthing experience for the mother. Yeah, look, there's a lot of information on this. I love this in the rubric. The write-up is exceptional. Okay, what will make the exceptionality here is that use of research. Okay. Okay, yeah, the same criteria has been given for the factors contributing to a positive experience for fathers, and it did say at least 2. Okay, so if you only use 2 and you explain them absolutely brilliantly with examples from literature, you can get 4 marks, okay, because it's given you the minimum requirement for that. All right, this remains true for the last one as well. Okay, you can obviously read through the rubric in your own time as well. Okay, Rebecca, yes, you have a question.
Hi. Listen, I just wanted to find out for this, because it doesn't specifically state that it's an essay. Can we, I know it goes against the traditional guidelines, but can we use bullet points? It is a kind of bullet pointy type question, or is that like a no?
No, so I wouldn't say bullet points. I'd rather say subheadings.
Okay.
Because it is a discussion at the end of the day.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously each point will have a subheading, say, but then it's like factors that contribute. Could it be like then it would be like a subheading on a subheading, if you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you could have different levels of subheadings.
Or just underline the factor itself. Or
no, so that's not APA as well. technically, to do that, to like bold a random thing. I mean, you wouldn't lose marks for it, attention, like in theory, but it's not really good academic practice to write that way. So, I mean, I don't encourage it. But yeah, don't use bullet points. It's never a good thing to do that, particularly when it is telling you to do a discussion. So anything you would put in a bullet point, just explain fully using an example from a literature in a paragraph.
So the writing must speak to the boldness of the factor, for example. So like the tetragen or whatever, you can't underline tetragen or what the tetragen is or what.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So this is where the guidelines for APA style and like headings and subheadings would come in.
Okay, I'll go and give that another read.
Thing here.
I think you sent it earlier.
Yeah.
APA style. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool, perfect. Thank you very much.
Specific link. Yeah. So follow APA in terms of subheading format, and then that will be fine.
All right.
Yeah, but just always in general avoid bullet points. Okay. Unless specifically.
All right, perfect. It was just a new type of write an in-depth guide, hearing guide, I think, bullet point for some reason.
Yeah, I know, but no.
Yeah, I get it. I get the reasoning behind it, so that makes sense. Yeah, cool. Thank you very much.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, are there any other questions about this question? This one is definitely going to take you the most time and is the most complex. Are we okay to move on to question 3? Lovely. Okay, question 3 is really a classic old-fashioned case study. So you've been given this video to watch with just a warning. There's like, it's actually quite horrific. Yeah, but anyway, it's a very interesting situation, and I think actually quite a cool question. So there is a link here to watch this video. It's about 25 minutes long. It's a little mini documentary from Al Jazeera, and it's about, yeah, this phenomenon that has developed in Indonesia over the time, known as tawuran. So essentially, high schools kind of start the, obviously groups of high school boys start these brawls on the street, and over time they have turned from kind of, classic schoolyard fistfights into literal brawls with sharp weapons. It's a bit traumatizing, like it's a bit violent, like there's some footage. So yeah, just like trigger warning on that. Like, I mean, you obviously don't see like blood or anything, but it's just, yeah, it was a bit wild. So just, yeah, prepare yourselves to watch the video. It's not that bad though, in terms of goriness, I guess. Yeah, so it's this, well, you need therapy after watching it. I don't think so. Yeah, so this kind of thing, and really, and a lot of the point that the journalist makes in the video is that it's very much linked to a deep patriarchal roots, and this idea it's turned into this kind of rite of passage for boys. Kind of prove your manliness or prove your, I don't know, your status by taking part in these things. And it's, yeah, there's very much this kind of hierarchy that develops. Obviously the older boys have been in more fights and obviously survived them, and so have this kind of notoriety around. But it's very gang-esque, right? There's a lot of that kind of stuff around here, and really it's really violent. There have been deaths. There's quite a lot of death that happens, and obviously not a lot can be done about it in terms of policing and justice, because it's difficult to catch individuals when there's a brawl with like 100 kids on the street, right? But yeah, anyway, watch the video. And then what you have to do in this question, I just want to see if it says specifically an essay. It actually doesn't. So it's not specifically an essay, although I mean, use an essay structure, there's no problem with that. But essentially, you need to explain from two different theoretical perspectives, how that theory kind of explains this problem. What would these theorists argue would be the reasons contributing to this problem from a developmentally, dev psych point of view, though, right? So yes, hegemonic masculinity, all of that stuff, right? Toxic masculinity, that whole thing. So that is at play, yes, and definitely will come into it in terms of socialization, how these things are being affected. So it's not one essay, it doesn't have to be a whole essay structure, but obviously must have some sort of structure because you are being asked to use two different theoretical perspectives here. Okay. So firstly, to do the bioecological systems or systems theory, so Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems model. Okay, remember how there are different layers, and then contributing ultimately to an individual's growth in the middle. So from that perspective, you'd be looking increasingly at the factors around the society that they highlight in the video that would contribute to these kids' development into this being a normalized and sought after practice, right? Cool. Okay, so firstly, yeah, Bronfenbrenner. So make sure you explain the theory first of all. That would be nice. Define the theory. And then also, most importantly, apply it using examples from the video. Right, so you do need to reference the theory. So when you speak about the theory, when you define it, obviously use a reference for that. Okay, it's not common knowledge. You're getting that from either your textbook or other readings that you have on these theories. And then you engage with the video as a case study. So you don't have to reference the video because it is a given resource for this question. You can just say in the documentary or whatever, right? Because, yeah, just in-text referencing it is not necessary in this context and will take up page count. Okay. So that's the instruction for that. And then, yeah, so secondly, you then approach it from a constructivism point of view, cognitive developmental theory, and then, yeah, the key theorist there being Piaget. So how would Piaget explain this situation? Okay. Very interesting. It's actually a very cool question. I do like this one. And I think that, especially after you've watched the video, you'll see how you can really pick it apart. And I think just choose the most prevalent examples you can get from the video that will explain this theoretical point of view. If I were you to do this process, I would go and refresh Bronfenbrenner, so that theory, and then watch the video through that lens. So while you're watching the video, try and, pick up examples, say, oh, this is what this home environment was like. This kind of contributes to this, make little notes for yourself so that you can tie it together analytically. And then watch it again with Piaget in mind. That's what I would do. I wouldn't try to do it at the same time, to be honest. I just think it would be easier to separate it. But yeah, each to their own. That's just my tip for approaching this question. Okay, 15 marks each. So that should help you in terms of how much to write. If you have, I don't know what the memo looks like, but 15 marks each. If you have 5 main points, that would make 3 marks per point, but it's actually more likely, yeah, it depends. I think that's likely, especially with the Bronfenbrenner one, because there's so many layers. Just make sure that if you have 5 points, you've at least explained each step of that theory, that model, and then given the example to explain why or how that example applies. Okay. and then you will get, that is enough marks for that. All right, are there any questions? Something that would be quite interesting, I think, to note from a constructivism point of view is how the violence is normalized. Yeah, so just think about that and how that fits into that framework when you watch the video. Rebecca, what 4 headings? What do you mean? So you'll essentially have, there'll be 2 parts to this answer. You will have the systems theory answer and then the constructivism answer. And then whatever subheadings you choose to use under there to organize it are up to you. It's not prescribed that you have to. Alrighty. Okay, so this is a more demanding assignment compared to the first one, so please don't underestimate how long it will take you. Start early. Okay, any questions about anything? The assignments, anything else? Now is the time. Yes, I will upload the PDF onto Learn now when we're done here. I did put it into the Colab so you can download it, but I don't know if it is there. It says it's there. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so if they do send out a new brief, which they may not, they may just, we may just apply the one that they sent out last year. It will be 2 weeks before the sit down. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but yeah, not just yet. But as soon as that is released, I will share it. But yeah, I have scheduled another NSS though to discuss the exam towards the end, which is soon, actually. Alrighty. Yeah, so the brief is less of a brief on what to study for the exam, just clues as to what the focus of the exam will be. But remember, at the end of the day, all material covered is examinable. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, any remaining questions? Otherwise, have a lovely evening. And I will see you next time. But otherwise, just pop into my inbox if you have any other concerns. Okay.